Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League Two podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by my regular guests, Matt Farley from the Stevenage Football Club podcast and Matt Boosey from the excellent Gills In The Blood TV. But we've got three special guests tonight. We've got Tom from All Dale, aren't we? We've got another Tom Large from AFC Wimbledon, the 9 Years podcast. And we're also joined by Barrow fan Taylor. So quite the plethora of guests this evening. Thanks a lot for your time, folks. I really appreciate it. I suppose we'll come to you first, Tom, because Rochdale, partly because Rochdale are in a very hectic position, but also I know you've got a carbonara waiting, so I won't keep you too long. But just talk to us about where you are as a Rochdale fan at the moment, because it's been such a tough few years for the club, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a turbulent time supporting the club the past few years. It's been almost like a gradual decline over the past few years, and I think this season it's been especially tough compared to the rest. You know, things obviously haven't transpired on the pitch, and off the pitch things seem to be still a little bit touchy here and there regarding ownership and what's going on with that. And yeah, we're staring down the barrel of relegation, which now does seem almost like a certainty at this point. Which, for a club that's never been outside the EFL, not nice to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you say it's a certainty, though, Tom. The gap's only 5 points, and I know that as a Dale fan, you'll be saying, yes, but look at this team. They're not going to play for any manager. This is all over. I know that's what a lot of Rochdale fans are saying. But things can change very quickly. I feel like if I'm in the Rochdale board's position, I would try and pull out every stop possible. And that might be the managerial situation. I don't like to talk about sacking managers because I know it's difficult, and I've got a lot of sympathy for the challenges that Jim Bentley inherited. But I think Rochdale, this is 102 years of footballing history we're talking about. I think Rochdale have got to make a change just to give them some sort of impetus.
I mean, it depended on how much you look into rumours and what's been said. I believe that there was a situation arose where we were looking at to move him on, but I think that our financial situation at the moment is dire at the moment, and I don't think we're in a position where we can actually afford to pay Bentley out of a contract. It would have to walk, and I just don't see him being that kind of man. And just touching back to what you said about, it's not all lost. No, on paper it isn't all lost. And I think I've built myself up a few times over the season where I thought, no, come on, kick on now. Obviously, like the other week, the Stevenage performance was brilliant. To go and beat a second in the league team, and for most part, from my perspective, play them off the park, that gave me a renewed hope, thinking, this isn't over yet. We can still go and do something here. To then back it up with the result at Grimsby, where we had countless chances to score and come away with that game from something. There's no consistency. I mean, I've flagged on my own page that we haven't managed to put a run together of more than 3 wins since BBM was in charge. And that's the last time we've managed to put 3 wins together in the league. And that's the kind of form now that you're going to have to pull out if you want to stand any chance of staying in this division.
I mean, coming to you, Matt Farley, because Stevenage went to Scotland and got turned over 2-0. And I think a few people both sets of fans really were stunned at half time at not only the score, but how Rochdale just outplayed them in that first half. I mean, did you, as a Stevenage fan, see something there that made you think they could get out of this?
Yeah, look, it was a great result for them, wasn't it? Obviously we went there that day. We just had the win at Wimbledon, and we were going through a bit of a bad patch, and we kind of thought maybe after the Wimbledon win that we'd kind of turned the corner. But I think at Wimbledon, I'll be honest, I don't think we played very well that night. We were fortunate to get the win in the end. So the Rochdale game was kind of caught in 2 minds. We thought we'd go and win, but at the same time, there's no easy game in League Two. Do you know what I mean? So, we've been Rochdale for 3 years now, and we know how difficult it can be. We all know that when you get to the end of the leagues, all the bottom sides start to pick up results, and all the top ones start to freeze a little bit. So, it wasn't a shock. I think what was a shock was being 2-0 down so early into the game and how badly we played that day. And, we've had a lot of issues over the last month. So, yeah, I think with Rochdale, there was a good opportunity for them to kick on after the win. But if I'm completely honest, I think they'll get relegated, if I'm honest. But if I'm being completely honest, I remember coming away from that day and speaking to a few of their fans outside. And I just had a little feeling that there's an opportunity there to kick on, but they just haven't done. And to stay in the league, you need to go and put some of those wins back to back. And when you don't, you lose a chance. Thought they were a good side that they played some really good football. Yeah, but unfortunately, I think Crawley will stay up, and I think them and Hartlepool will go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. I mean, Tom, if you're Rochdale manager in this situation, how would you put together a blueprint for Dale to get just about in? Do you build around Ethan Brearley? Do you try and create some chances for Hendo to put away? Do you hope Abraham Ado has one or two more performances in his locker like the one against Stevenage?
I definitely wouldn't base it around Ado, considering they were his first 2 assists all season. I had 1,000,001 fans tell me what a player you've got on your hands there. And yeah, I just said, well, that's the only game he's done it in the entire season. He's a player that flatters to deceive when you look at him from an opposition perspective. I think I'd have to look at, the Brierley situation again. That's one that seems to be that it will be wrapped up now, that deal in the summer, that he will move on to Blackburn. I'd probably say Hendo, because I do believe we actually I believe he's activated a clause that we have to offer him a deal for another year. And, he's a great figure around the club, regardless of what's happened this season. He's, his experience, vast wealth, goal scorer, great with the young lads. And I think, as I say, it's looking likely that it will be the National League, but I would look to base the team around Hendo going forward. And if we've got any chance of staying up, it needs to be no fear football, and Hendo heading the attack for me.
Yeah, well, let's hope that Rochdale can sort of somehow claw some results together, but I know it's looking like a difficult situation at the moment. Tom, thanks so much for your time. Go and enjoy your carbonara, mate.
No problem. Thank you very much. I will tune into the rest of the show later. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, fella. We want to bring him down from Sutton United channel, Gandermonium. But first I wanted to talk to you, Taylor, about Barrow's season, because for a long part of it, you were sort of really in the midst of the playoff conversation. You've dropped off a little bit more recently, but, well, I suppose in the mid part of the season, but we've actually seen Barrow start to find some form. They're now 5 unbeaten in the league and actually only 4 points off the playoffs. So has that given you a little bit more hope that you can maybe make the last couple of months of the season quite exciting?
Yeah, I think we have turned a corner in the last few weeks. I think, if you asked me a few weeks ago, before we were getting sort of 3 points against Stockport, obviously a good result against Sutton last week. I think if you asked me a few weeks ago, my answer would have been a bit different. But I think now there's a bit of renewed optimism within the team, the squad, the fans, and some of the games we've got coming up. Obviously we've got Harrogate coming up this weekend. You do have to think that we have an opportunity that, there's always that one team in sort of the playoff reckoning that sort of just comes back up the league and will nick the spot that probably aren't expected to. And I think that could, it could be us. I've said all season I don't think we'll get playoffs, but I think that's just been a realistic point of view. We didn't expect to be in the position we are this season, so to be here is obviously is great. But I think we do have to sort of take a look at where we are in the league at this point in time. We've obviously got over the 50-point mark, and we are sort of in this position now. So I think we're sort of looking at expectations and what we can do a little bit more than what we have this season. We've obviously got over that 50-point mark, so it's an opportunity to look at what else we can do. And who knows, we could get that playoff place. You never know. The last few weeks, the last couple of results we've got suggest that we do have the reckoning to do so.
What's been the key to those few results, do you think, Taylor?
I think defensively we're looking a lot more solid. I think at times this season we've looked a bit fragile at the back. Generally we've been pretty okay, but I think at times we've looked quite fragile. I think we've lacked a plan B at times, but I think we've potentially worked out a bit of a different avenue to getting results now. Sort of performances against the likes of Stockport and Sutton have suggested that we do have a bit more of a plan about how we operate against teams sort of towards the top of the division, whereas in the past we've sort of flattered to deceive against some of the better sides. And I think sort of that, what's the word? I think we're just looking a bit more tenacious in when we're against these sort of teams, we're not worried or scared about what could happen. We're looking a bit more sort of interested, and not worrying that we could get a few goals pumped past us, which at times has been the case against obviously Carlisle and Stevenage this season. But I think sort of a plan B has sort of come into fruition the last few weeks, and we're looking at a better side for it.
I mean, let's actually bring in Dan from Sutton United channel, Gandermonium. Great to have you on the show, Dan. We will talk about Sutton United in a moment. Really appreciate your time. But just, you were nodding on a little bit when Taylor was talking about Barrow's solidity, I suppose, from the last few games, because you were one of their opponents. So just, could you give us an opposition perspective of Barrow?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great game last week, to be honest. But it was two sides in good form and largely cancelled each other out. Conditions played a big part in that as well. I thought both sides had a real go, but it was just not a great day for playing. But they were just very big at the back, very solid. Didn't really give us a lot of chance to, because we love to try and get it wide to people like Adjeboy and our wingers. They didn't give us a lot of time there. Any balls in the box, their lads were, as you need to be at this level, they were bang on set pieces and crosses in, just getting something on it, get a head on it, just get it clear and reset. And that goes a long, long way in this division. They certainly looked very solid, gave us, we didn't have a shot on target all day. So, it was my only concern with them was when Whitfield went off, he was very good. As soon as he went off, it seemed, rather than push on and look to try and win the game, because we'd been defending quite deep all second half because of the conditions, that kind of seemed to kill their momentum a little bit. But apart from that, they were solid, decent. You could see why they were in good form at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, coming to you then, Tom Large from 9 Years podcast and AFC Wimbledon fan. I suppose it's interesting that you've got Sutton United and Barrow, who are possibly two of the smaller clubs in the league, and yet you've got Wimbledon, former FA Cup winners, a bit more prestige about you in one sense, and you're not being able to sort of, you're actually quite a few places below them in the table in the bottom half. Do you look on them with a bit of envy in the sense that both Sutton and Barrow have been able to establish clear playing identities and be competitive towards the playoff places, where Wimbledon, perhaps on a slightly bigger budget, haven't really been able to do that?
Yeah, no, I think our lack of identity is something that's really, really worrying. We seem to just not have anything. I'd rather us go out and lose, but there be a style or some sort of game plan, but there just doesn't seem to be one at the moment. We've obviously played Newport in the week, and it just seems to turn to, now we've got Ali Al-Hamadi, it's just give him the ball and he'll do something for us. I mean, the lad scored 6 goals and we failed to win a game in those 6. It's a worrying record that we've not won in 9, and we've lost or drawn our last 6 when going ahead, which is ridiculous. When we went from not being able to score and 0-0s, we went from being 10 unbeaten, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in 16th. With no, I could not tell you what the game plan is when they go out there. Under Mark Robinson last season, although we went 28 games without a win at the start of that season, we did play exciting football, and you could see what the kind of ethos was and what the plan was. But under Jackson, I genuinely could not tell you what he wants to do, or if he knows what he wants to do.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, coming to you then, Taylor, do you think that's the key to challenging for the playoffs if you've not got the biggest budgets, just having? Because I feel like with Sutton United, I feel like it's 4-4-2, it's aggressive, it's very difficult to play against. There's some physical players in that team, some experienced players as well. They've got a solid core that have been together for a long time. With Barrow, again, it's pressing 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 under Pete Wild, and it feels like what you can expect from some of these teams. Is that the key to it if you want to try and be competitive with a modest budget?
Yeah, I think you've got to have some sort of identity and plan as to what you want to do, but then recognise at the same time that you can't play that way every single week. So you do have to have a bit of a plan B. I feel like I've said that all season, is needing a sort of a plan B, because you go into a game and you will want to play a certain way, but it's not always possible for various reasons: the opposition, conditions, fitness, the personnel in the team. You can't always play a certain way every single game, so there's got to be a bit of a plan B as well. But an identity is sort of a must in terms of sort of generally over the course of a season. Because without an identity, I feel like you end up looking a little bit lost at times. Players will want to sort of do their own thing, and there's mixed messages and whatnot, and that's when you can sort of start to struggle, and results will start to sort of deteriorate, and you will end up sort of getting in a bit of a rut, because it's really easy to get into a rut. It is very difficult to get out of one.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. Coming to you then, Dan. I mean, what do you think Sutton United's chances are? Because I think it was you who replied to me on Saturday saying, although on paper we are still in the playoff mix, we missed Craig Eastman on Saturday, and it just feels like we might fall a little bit short. Is that where the Sutton United fans are at the moment? Even though, yeah.
It's a varying scale at the minute. I mean, we've had a really hard sort of first half of the season up to Christmas. A lot of injuries. Got all that out of the way now, thankfully, and we've actually finally got a squad that we can choose. We can mix it up a bit. We can bring people off the bench and actually change games, and we have seen the benefits of that with the run we've been on. We've not been playing brilliantly lately. I wouldn't say we put together many great 90 minutes. It's been generally a good half, and that's usually been enough.
Which is odd. I mean, if you don't mind me jumping in there, Dan, it's odd because earlier in the season, when you weren't quite getting the results, I wouldn't have said you were a million miles away in some of those games. It felt you were quite close. So it's funny how football levels out a little bit at times.
Yeah, I mean, we were a little bit unlucky early season not to get some results, but I wouldn't say we've been lucky. We've certainly worked for everything we've got lately. Sure. But it's just trying to put together a solid 90 minutes. There's been a couple of games where we've been a bit quiet first half, and normally Matt's sides do like to start really quickly, get on the front foot, kind of impose themselves on the game. We haven't done that a lot. I think probably the best start we've had was at Newport when we took the lead early there. But by and large, we've had quiet first halves, but really good, strong second halves. And that seems to be where the good forms come lately. But I think across at Gandermonium, it's kind of across the board. Some people are like, well, before Tuesday, people were talking about, well, we might be able to nick third here, and it's like, really? And then there's people like me who are a bit more pragmatic, going, if we make the playoffs, we'll sneak 6th or 7th. The reason behind that is our running. We've got 6 of the top 7, I think, in our last 9. So if we make it, we'll have bloody earned it, but it's going to be difficult. And I think that's probably where a little bit of the sort of hesitancy comes from, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, speaking as someone that's lost both games to Sutton United since your first Football League fixture between the two clubs, what have you made of Matt Gray's side?
I'll be honest with you, New Year's Day, I wasn't particularly in the state to be watching football, but it was,
at least you're honest, mate.
It was a tough day. And then obviously we played Sutton
at home on the 15th of October.
Yeah, it was early on in the season, yeah. And that game was the turning point before our 10-game unbeaten run. We were abject of any ideas. There was nothing in our performance. And all of a sudden we come out the next game and it looked like something had been said to the players. We changed formation and we were a new team. The same can't be said from our loss on New Year's Day because we just carried on that poor run. But no, they've been playing good football. I kind of keep my eye across the results and beating teams that maybe you wouldn't have said at the start of the season. You've got a core set of players that seem to understand how to play with each other. I think that's quite important. You have got that identity, like Gabe said earlier, where you're quite aggressive and you kind of stamp your mark on the game. And I mean, on New Year's Day, I don't know whether our players had been out the night before celebrating the New Year, but they just didn't seem to be interested at all. There was you think for Wimbledon Sutton, it's hyped up to be a bit of a local derby, and it's all like everyone kind of what's the word? Kind of romanticizes it because obviously, but I think it's quite a friendly encounter. I don't.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's, especially with the fans. But you'd think the players would give it a bit on the pitch. It's hyped up to be a derby, and I mean, half our players were strolling around the pitch most of the game and couldn't really put together a pass or two. So we definitely didn't even deserve a goal. I'd say on that day. And yeah, it's good to see a local team doing well, but I'd rather it be us in South West London.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, listen, Dan and Taylor, thanks a lot for talking about your teams. More than welcome to hang on and chat about the League Two wider stuff, or if you need to head off, that's fine.
I haven't got a carbonara to go to, but I've definitely
You've not got carbonara. Okay, what have you had for dinner?
It's pasta, but it's not a carbonara.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think like everyone's having pasta tonight. Was it like a Thursday a pasta night or something?
No idea.
What are you having on your pasta? That's the big question.
I think it's just some bolognese stuff. By the looks of it.
Bolognese stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
I
He's a simple guy. I like it.
Spoken like a true Italian. Well, wanted to come to you then, Matt. What do you make of Sutton United? Do you think they've still got an outside chance of making the playoffs?
Yeah, look, definitely. Again, I've said it many a times on these platforms. Any one of those sides that are involved have got a chance of making it. Do you know what I mean? Especially now that we're coming into the last, 11, 10 games of the season. Anyone that can come with a little bit of momentum can make it. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about for Sutton is they lost the other night, and that was a really big game, I felt. And when you look at round the division and you look certainly up in those playoff spots, I think they've played 2 or 3 more games than everyone else. I think there's teams that have got 2 or 3 games in hand. So I'm a little bit worried for them. Oddly, about a week ago, I was really fancying them to do it, and then thought if they can win that game the other night, they'll they go into those playoff spots and they lost it. So I'm not too sure. Look, they're a very good physical side. When we played them in February, it was like watching volleyball. The ball was in the air consistently. I mean, look, everyone knows how we play, but I didn't realise how Sutton played in that, before that game. They were very physical like us. So if I'm honest, I don't think they'll make it. But look, you never know. There's 10 games to go. Anyone with a bit of momentum, other sides might get injuries or suspensions. You never know. That's the beauty of our division, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one person who certainly knows the beauty of the division is Parksy from the Lowdown podcast. How are you, mate?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Getting a little bit squeaky bum time, but I'm good.
Yeah, well, it's certainly squeaking very loudly just at the moment. I don't know if you can adjust the settings slightly, but no, I think it's interesting. I wanted to ask you, Matt, about Leyton Orient, Matt Boosey. This is because they were one that we thought might have been sort of dropping off a little bit. They had quite a bad January, but since then their form's been just immaculate. I mean, are you pretty confident they're going to take home the title?
Yes, in a word now, yeah. The last time you asked me this question, I thought they were struggling. So yeah, I might claim the assist for that for Leyton Orient going on to win the title, because it seems every team that I back at the moment goes the other way. So I think I said Stevenage were going to win the title the week after as well, and that went horrendously wrong. So no, they've been, to be fair, they came out of that spell where they was really struggling for form, and I know they had injuries, and we've spoken before, and I think it's been mentioned a couple of times. They're an interesting side because their top scorer, I think, has got 9, 10. I'm sure Parksy will put me right on that. They don't have a 20-goal a season striker, but what they do is they share the goals around really well, which I think works really well, because then if one gets injured, you're not losing a big chunk and the big percentage of goal scorers, because there's still plenty on the pitch that can do it. I think they've got a good bench. We've mentioned Charlie Kelman on previous episodes, who I think he's not prolific, but he's able to do a job. And if someone else can't play or is slightly off it, he can pinch the odd goal here and there, and they're super solid defensively. And yeah, I think the word that you used pretty much sums them up since they've come out of that rough trot, and they've been immaculate, and they're going to win the title comfortably, I think. Now, I know Stevenage are back to within striking distance, so to speak, but similar to teams down the bottom that are trying to stay above the line. Leyton Orient are trying to fight off all comers, and all they're doing is they're picking up points and they're ticking off games at the same time, and that's crucial at this period of the season. And I think they will win the title. I think Stevenage, for what it's worth now, will just about do enough to finish second. And I think the playoffs is from...
So they're not in crisis now, are they, Matt?
Well, they're coming back towards a blip, I'd imagine. They're still, they can still be better. I think Matt would agree with that. All jokes aside, I think they can still be better.
That's winning from about
but
4 weeks. You know?
they've certainly turned a corner slightly, or at least they've got the car pointing in the right direction again. But no, I think they'll have enough for second. They've got themselves out of, again, like Leyton Orient did previously. Whether there's enough games for Stevenage to be able to chase down Richie Wellens' men, I don't think so anymore. And in terms of the playoffs, I think that's 8th and upwards. You talk about Sutton. They must have been very, very good for the rest of the season, because I've seen them twice. They're absolutely average for both of them. We beat them 1-0 in October when we were shocking. And we had 3 goals disallowed as well as scoring one that day. I know Dan said, they didn't have a shot on target in one game. We don't have a shot in autumn. So it's all levels, isn't it? And we beat them 1-0, we're comfortable. And then they scored, I think, last minute in the return fixture at Ganders Green Lane in between Christmas and New Year. And it was another horrible example of what we were like pre-takeover. We worked so hard to finally score a goal and end. I think it was about a 10-game run without netting, and then switched off in injury time. But I've not seen enough. I know it's a very small segment of the season. I get that. And like I say, with the utmost respect, they must have been very good for the other 35 matches. But I think they'll come up short. Like we said a few weeks ago, I've said 8th upwards is the top 8 now, and I don't think that will change.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think we can ask questions of Mansfield and Bradford and Northampton, but I think their squad depth is certainly on a slightly different level to Sutton. Coming to you then, Park. So yeah, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Steve Evans has obviously been a bit of a thorn in Leyton Orient historically, but I bet you're hoping to keep that title away from his clutches this time around.
Well, to be honest, I've been quite confident all season, and I think I was on the debate a few months ago with Matt, and said that Gillingham would turn the corner quite successful, and I think I was right. So hopefully Orient win the title is going to be a right call as well. But I think the biggest thing for me is that if you look at the fixtures over the next 10, 11 games for most of these clubs, they're all playing each other. And I know that someone came back to me on one of my tweets and said that all of them played 6 of the last 9, and 6 of the top 9 in the last 11 games. But we could lose 6 of those and win 5 and probably win the league.
Yeah, absolutely. You seem to have a bit of a hiss back there. I don't quite know whose side it is. I don't know if it's possible to have a slight sort of fiddle around with the settings. I'm not a technical expert, as you can imagine. But coming to you then, Tom, I suppose you look at it, and Leyton Orient and Stevenage right up there, not having a huge bigger budget than AFC Wimbledon, and it feels like you have relied a little bit on individualism at times. We talked about I suppose Ayuba Sal, and obviously now Ali Al-Hamadi. I mean, do you feel like if Johnnie Jackson is given time, he will home in an identity? Where are you on the manager situation?
It's a tough one, because I don't like manager roundabouts. I don't like us just getting. We've had 3 in the last 18 months. And I like the idea of having Johnnie Jackson when he comes in. I wasn't a big fan of the fact his idol's Carl Robinson for all reasons that come with that. But he wasn't connected. It was the first time we had a manager that wasn't in some way connected to the club. I know we had Bowen before that, obviously wasn't, but he was always going to be on a temporary measure. This was our first kind of long-term planned manager. He wasn't connected to the club. He was a young. I was excited by him, definitely excited manager, and it started quite rough, but we were kind of there. I was like, look, we'll see him out. It's his first job. He didn't really have a backup plan to his 5-3-2, and we kind of accepted that. We just let it be. And then we went on this run, and then all of a sudden you come into 2023, we lose to Sutton on New Year's Day, and it all just seems to kind of go up in the air from that. We've won 1 game in the whole of 2023, and we were 3 points off the playoffs. And it's just such a remarkable... Yes. Yeah. And it was such a remarkable change from obviously before that. Did that run of 10 games include a Papa John's Trophy game that we won on penalties? Yeah, but we'll leave that out. It was nice to say we were 10 unbeaten. And I just don't know. We don't have the money to bring someone in that's going to be a well-known name. We've obviously just appointed Craig Cope as well as head of football operations, and I'm excited by him. He's got a good buzz around him, so I'm hoping he can kind of get some more work done in the summer window. Whether
Danny
Jackson's next to him,
Danny Macklin's
of course,
come in as well, yeah.
Of course, and Danny Macklin's come in and changed a lot. And I think there's been a lot of background change, and we're kind of stepping towards being more more of a professional club. I think we're kind of putting the right turns in behind the scenes, and in that sense, but obviously that never will translate onto the pitch. But with Johnnie Jackson, I think the fans will turn soon. Or I mean, the flags were taken down in the 70th minute, our last home game against Mansfield, and if the fans go, then there's no point really. Like the question, for example, should he be there, will then become void, because if the fans go, it's like when Mark Robinson was in charge. I loved Mark Robinson. I think he was a good manager. Obviously, in his early tenure, 28 games without a win speaks for itself. But I was still more positive in that time than I am currently, which I think says a lot about Johnnie Jackson and how he kind of sets his teams out. Because we've got a League Two talented squad. There's no doubt about that. We've got players that are good enough for this division. I mean, some of you guys might disagree with me, but we've got players that they've got the skill set to be in this division, if not pushing for a higher place in the table.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think I've got a bit of a concern with John Jackson. I think both the management jobs he's had so far have come with challenges. So at Charlton, he was working within a very chaotic structure, which is never ideal. And then at Wimbledon, you're coming into a club that's gone 28 games without a win, lost Jack Redoni, lots of challenges, sort of rebuilding a little bit out and paying off player lane costs and all those sorts of things. So I think he's inherited some difficult challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of the managers we've talked about, Matt Gray at Sutton and Pete Wild at Barrow, I don't think they necessarily market themselves as managers as well as Johnnie Jackson does. I think Johnnie Jackson is a more handsome manager than those two, and I think he presents himself in a sort of better way, and he dresses well. But I think that I find myself thinking there's a little bit more substance about Matt Gray and Pete Wild on the evidence that I've seen so far, and that's where I have a little bit of concern. And for me, as a sort of neutral voice on it, I need to see a little bit more evidence from Johnnie Jackson that there is something behind the appearance.
Yeah, no, he really excited me when he came in, because he's got that fresh face look about him. He looks like he's the business. He does. He walks in, he's got that air about him, and we loved it when he was at the start of the season. Those videos done, and you look at him. Remember when Ollie Palmer signed? I thought Ollie Palmer was the next Pele when we did our little announcement video of the holding the scarf on the new plough, like the new building of plough, and I was like, wow, this is remarkable. And Jackson was the same. I thought we've got ourselves a serious manager here. I know a few Charlton fans, and they were like, look, you've got no plan B. And I mean, that was proved pretty quickly. But not to rub it in, Matt, obviously, I know your fortunes have turned now. But when he won that first game of the season, obviously against Gillingham, I thought, wow, we're getting promoted. I was like, we're automatics. This is life's done. Very changed. Football is a strange game. But I that first game, I thought he's really turned this around, because that is some elephant in the room, that 28 games without a win. And those players came out and played like they'd won 8 games in a row coming into this season. So wow. I thought that was really good, and he's clearly got a motivational aspect about him. But you notice in post-match interviews now, he doesn't seem to have that passion he had at the start. I don't know whether his head's been turned potentially, because there was very, very strong links with him with the Oxford job, was it?
Yeah.
I think it was one of the teams that play in yellow. I get confused with Oxford and Burton sometimes. But
we'll let you off. But yeah. I think the main selling point for Wimbledon, and we'll come on to you with Leyton Orient Parks in a moment. But I just want to ask Tom about sort of the youth development, because you mentioned that game against Gillingham where Jack Curry had that man of the match performance, and since I think he struggled a little bit with injuries this season. But I was at the Stockport game, and Hosbila really impressed me. And then I look at Alfie Bendel, who a lot of people are really excited about, and there's lots of players through this Wimbledon academy that are supposedly quite highly rated. Is that a part of the club that the club's got to build around now?
Yeah, massively. I think Mark Robinson showed us that. He showed that we've got talent in our academy, and we've known it for a while. We've had players come through, and I think sometimes we've kind of failed to give them the chance they deserved. The hype around Alfie Bendel, I'm really excited. I'm quite vocal on the fact that I don't think he should be in the first team. I think the lad's only just turned 18. There's at this level, obviously there's going to be exceptions, but regardless, you shouldn't be playing first team football at 17, 18. You don't learn enough. You need a consistent season. 19, 18, yeah. 19, again, obviously with the exceptions, but I just think Alfie Bendel is so young, and we did it to Anthony Hartigan in that sort of defensive midfield position, that we kind of put so much pressure on his shoulders that he was this golden child of the academy. And now he's not kind of hit that.
Is the value not higher though at the younger age though, Tom? So
absolutely, you buy into the potential, but yeah. I would rather give him a season where he's playing 40 games or however many games against players his own age and let him develop in that way, and then step him into the first team sporadically next season when he's 18, 19. Ayoub and Jack Rudoni obviously had seasons on loan before that, and they kind of learnt their trade that way. And I think I'm glad Alfie Bendel's gone out on loan. He seems to be smashing it at Eastbourne. But he is quite like there's no doubt he's a good footballer at all. He's clearly very good. And everyone's seen like clips and stuff from Twitter, but I just don't think he needs to go into an atmosphere where it can turn quite toxic quite quickly at Wimbledon. And Anthony Hardscombe got on the bad end of that. And I remember there was a game after where he was crying and stuff. And you don't need that as a 19, 20-year-old. You need a positive footballing environment. But our academy is great. We've had some players come through. Hospiller is the latest, obviously, the fullback duo of him and Jack Curry.
I really like him, actually. He's very agile as well, isn't he?
Yeah, and he loves a little cutting and shot as well. Like, I'm always for that. Jack Curry, we had a bid in January that was, apparently we had a bid after the 600k bid that we rejected. I'm personally quite disappointed at that fact. I don't think he warrants at the moment more than £1 million, even if that. Plus
I
that
think
bigger sell on.
£1 million would do a lot for the club, wouldn't it?
Massively. But I don't think Jack Curry would get that now. I think Bristol were desperate in the January window. But I think the reason the club maybe kept him was because we'd obviously lost Riley Towler, who was on loan, he is an absolute Rolls Royce footballer, and I'm very jealous of Pompey. Obviously we lost Ayoub Assal. And I think we didn't want to lose another big young focal figure of our team. And don't get me wrong, Jack Curry's an absolutely exemplary footballer, and I think he's got a great mindset as well. But obviously we've now had injuries and stuff where we've lost obviously Huss, and we've lost Lee Brown to injury, and Harry Pell. And I think we are starting to see that where we're only naming 5 subs on the bench, and that's kind of hindering us. But we've now recalled 3 youth players. So Bendel, Luke Jenkins, and Dylan Ajay-Hersey should get their chance. I'd like to have seen Luke Jenkins at the weekend on Tuesday against Newport. I think I've seen him play against Sutton in the Cup, and we played very well, actually. We played quite a young side, and Luke Jenkins was remarkable. And I think him learning next to Alex Pearce, Alex Pearce for me is the best defender I've seen in the division. His ability to read the game and step in is incredible. Obviously, there's a natural bias.
He'll take out Johnnie and
I have to be honest. When Stevenage, I think you said they had an off game earlier. I didn't think he was. I mean, he scored, so naturally, he had the right game. But I didn't think he was that as impressive as I think people had hyped him up a lot to me. And I was expecting this like Thiago Silva-esque footballer to come down to play alone. But I genuinely think obviously he's clearly very good, because I think he's like the 3rd ranked player in the division, so he's obviously not bad. But in the time that I've seen him, I wasn't as impressed as I think I'd kind of planned to be. But yeah, Alex Pearce for me, I've seen him on multiple occasions, so I've kind of seen that consistency and his ability to read the game. And his people question his mobility, but it's that split second where he jumps in front of the defender or steps forward and reads a pass that for me is just nothing we've had at the back in a long time anyway, since the non-league days.
Well, I think we can agree Piergiani's better than Eric Dyer and Harry Maguire. I think we can all agree with that.
Should have been called up today. It's unbelievable.
I know.
You're losing for the season, though, or 3 games. Think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Pierce isn't in because he's Irish, so that's kind of
course, the only reason. Yeah.
That's the only reason.
He's the second best Irish centre half, because
you are sorry.
He's the second best Irish centre half, because Conor Masterson's the best centre half in League Two.
Okay, all gang. I mean, do you want to throw something into the ring, Patsy? Dan Happy, Ed Turns.
Ed Turns is Welsh, so we won't get into that. Dan Happy is unfortunately out of action, but he was having a marvellous season. So I'm sure we could all have a little bit about who's best and etc. So we'll go back. However, Ollie Palmer in the same place as Pele, what was that? I've never.
I thought it was going to be unreal. I genuinely thought this man was going to be scoring 40 goals a season. I was so purely off of an announcement video, which I was deceived.
So was Brian Reynolds, obviously. Sorry.
Tom, I've got one question, if I may, regarding Wimbledon, because you mentioned that. You mentioned that first game of the season. Sorry to take your job, Paris Magoma. I thought that day absolutely ran the show opening day at Plough. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He was leggy, he was rangy, he was energetic. He got about the pitch. He played he wanted to play forwards all the time, and I thought you looked a really good side that day. And I know we were woeful for the first half of the season, so it's difficult to gauge just how good he could be. But is it a coincidence that your poor run of form has coincided with Magoma leaving and then obviously going to those that shall not be mentioned? Because you said about a plan B, and I remember you coming to the Priestfield just a few weeks ago, and Harry Pell played centre midfield. Just spent the 70 minutes that he was on the pitch going around trying to elbow everybody. Absolute hooligan. I didn't understand the approach at all, and it didn't feel like a Johnny Jackson team for me. And then everyone else sort of tried to follow Pell's lead and kept jumping into poor tackles. And I thought it played into our hands brilliantly, and we ended up seeing out the game comfortably after turning it around after going behind to Abi Al-Hamadi's early goal second half. I didn't see what Pell brought to the performance or what he brings to the team, other than firing up his teammates too much, and then they all seem to lose their head as well as him.
No, you're not in disagreement about Harry Pell. I personally don't think he's the right player for us. I like the element that he brings. He brings that. I think me and Nick on the show we call it tactical nows. We say, because he gets in players gets in the opposition, but it gets to a point where he does
WWE, I think, at
he does tear himself on the floor a lot. He did well against Orient earlier in the season at home. He was playing that sort of pantomime villain quite well, but he has stepped too far. And I think now with the options we've got, he doesn't get into my first choice 11 at all, and he hasn't done for a few months. I don't think he offers much footballing wise. I think he just offers that experience and the ability to wind people up. And I think that's all he does. I'd rather have a more creative player in that 10 role. He definitely isn't a deep player for me. He doesn't win any headers at 6'3". So kind of that aspect for me. Just touching back on Paris Magoma, obviously he's where he ends up now. We'll leave, but I think he was. I said it. He's the best player I've ever seen in Wimbledon shirt. First game of the season. But as soon as we changed the way we play, which was about 3 games after that, he completely fell off, and I think that's why Brentford recalled him. We used him basically as a way to get the ball forward and attack. Like you said, that sort of attacking-minded approach. He used to drop into centre-back almost when we were in transition. It was great. Like, everything was good. But then we changed the way we play to be a bit more direct and less carrying the ball through the middle. And Alex Woodjar kind of stepped into that role a bit more. And he just lost all impact.
See, I thought Woodyard coming in would actually help Magoma, because it would allow him to
me too,
and take on that freedom.
Yeah, I thought he'd be a great player to sit next to Alex Woodyard, but I actually started preferring George Marsh over Paris Magoma. A George Marsh player, I think, has been quite unlucky this year. He played against Bradford. God, might have been January. I think maybe early February, and he was remarkable for me anyway. A lot of people don't like him, but I think he's a very good player, and he's been playing at right back and right wing back, which, changing from there from centre mid is quite a difficult position.
It's interesting you mentioned that, actually, Tom, because I remember watching George Marsh play for. Actually, bring Parksy in on this, because I remember watching him play for Orient against,
of course,
Colchester, I think it was, on Boxing Day 2019, and you lost 3-1 that day. But George Marsh was by far Orient's best player, and he's a midfielder, but he was actually playing right back that day, because I think he didn't have a right back at the time. So, I mean, what do you think of George Marsh? What's his best position, do you reckon?
I'd say that, I agree with Tom. I think George Marsh is a severely underrated player. He played well in central midfield, but I think when he was with us, he was quite young and a little bit naive. But when he was put into right back, which is a pretty structured, straightforward position, you have to do one thing or the other, get forward or defend. It's quite simple. He was quite good. Very underrated, good player. He probably needs to get some love from somewhere. I think some teams are out there that could do with the George Marsh. Like Dan Kemp going to Hull, it might just be a case of wrong team, wrong time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's come on to you and Leyton Orient, because I suppose we've talked with Tom about youth development and when's the right time, and the decisions to loan Alfie Bendel out and things like that, and the progression planning. And I suppose you've got a similar dilemma with Dan Nkrumah, who's this really talented striker at Leyton Orient, where it's like he's clearly very highly rated and he's clearly very coveted, but you're at a stage where it is the high stakes point of the season, and it is kind of about results, and sometimes that doesn't lend itself to trying out sort of unproven players. So has that brought challenges for Nkrumah? Is he someone you're hoping to see get some action once you secure promotion?
He's obviously a player that has got a lot of good press, and there was obviously talk of him going to West Brom, Middlesbrough early in the season. But if he was that good, Tom said about 18, 19-year-olds not getting in the team, he would be on the bench if he was that good. So either they're essentially protecting him because of potential sale, or he's not as good as some of the players we've already got.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. What have Leyton Orient got to do then for you to make sure that you get over the line?
Win 5 games. I mean, I think 3 will get us promoted. I think we need to get to 8 points. I think that's going to be the benchmark for the season. To win the league, I was quoting 90. Probably go 86, 85 now. Too many teams are playing for the top 9, 10. And there's a lot of teams playing for players at the moment. They're causing difficulty. Like Hartlepool, as an example, on the upswing. I think it's going to be a case of 8 to 9 points is what we need.
Well, let's hope you can get that. Matt, what do you think is going to be required this season, in terms of points tallies for automatic promotion and the title?
Yeah, I think looking at the automatics, I think anywhere over 80 points gives you a really good opportunity. So we're sitting with 66, and we're kind of saying that if we can get minimum 5 more wins, we're probably there. So, then you're asking, I think it's Northampton who are currently 4th, you're asking them to get nearly another 20 points, so which is 2/3 of what they need to get to make that. So I think for us, I think 5 more wins for us. I think 80 plus points probably gets you there. Again, I think for the title, probably near 90. But look, anything can change with all the teams up there. But yeah, I think for us, certainly, we've got, to be honest with you, I'm looking at our fixtures now. All the home games we've got, there's no reason why we can't win all of them, to be honest with you. We've got teams like Colchester at home.
Colchester at home, yeah.
Grimsby at home, Salford at home. I mean, actually, from the 5 that we've got, there's no reason why we can't win every single one of those, actually. So we could probably... I was going to say we could probably solely get promoted on the home form if we keep going, but look, it's ifs and buts and maybe. So I think I think over 80 points probably gets the automatic promotion spots. Yeah.
I mean, it's coming into the stage, Matt Boosey, where maybe sometimes the permutations of the games come into the factor. So, for example, Hartlepool away, you'd call it a really favourable fixture in January, but maybe in April, where they're absolutely fighting for their lives and it's do or die time, maybe that becomes a slightly harder fixture than, say, for example, a Swindon away if they're mid-table and out of the playoff reckoning.
Yeah. I mean, we at the end of the day, as fans, we can't get inside the minds of these players, and some might be on the beach subconsciously. I get that. So it's, I see what you're saying. You'd rather be playing Hartlepool in January with loads of the season than to the point where it's do or die, and they know they've got to leave everything on the pitch. I mean, I know professional footballers should be leaving everything on the pitch every single game, but I know what you're saying. And these games, the games that shouldn't be as risky become more risky, and vice versa. It's going to be a really interesting end to the season. I think we're all still saying Rochdale are gone, regardless of the result against Stevenage the other week. And I still think at the top end, like I said earlier, I think Leyton Orient and Stevenage will be the first 2. But there's going to be some anomalies, isn't there, between now and the start of May. I think there'll be the odd result that gets chucked up, like a Rochdale beating Stevenage, for example. It's one of them that no one expected. It was a coupon buster, that type of thing. There'll be a few more. I'm sure we'll probably see one potentially in every round of fixtures, dare I say it, between now and the end of the campaign, because you'll get teams that are desperately fighting for points to stay in the division. So they might go and nick something off of a top team. And then you could have a result where you not expect it that ends up. So I'm trying to, well, like you say, you'd fancy a team, someone might be 9th or 10th in the division, but if they know they can't get in the playoffs and they know they're safe at the other end, then they might drop off a little bit, and then you can go and pick up an easier 3 points than like you say, back in January, February, when 10th was still within a shot of the playoffs, because it comes back to this thing that we're ticking off games. So there's less margin for error and less opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, I want to come to you with some predictions, really, because you're looking at this from a bit of a neutral point of view. I think it's pretty much a given that AFC Wimbledon will be playing League Two football next season. So, first of all, who are your who are your two to go up automatically with Leyton Orient? Because I think that's a bit of a given as well.
Come on, Tom.
Well, I'm going to say Stevenage because you were so good at our place. So you've got that. So Stevenage and Orient.
Second half.
I think that second half. I think that third spot is quite difficult. I've stopped looking at that side of the table now, unfortunately. So I don't know what the exact points are, but there was quite a few teams that were kind of up and around. Let me have a quick look at the table.
Yeah, no, go for
Very
it.
unprofessional, but let me have a quick look.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So there's Carlisle, who are, I think are they below Stevenage?
Yeah, Carlisle have got a game in hand on the others.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Carlisle and Bradford have got a game on the others, in that the last 5 out of that top 7. And just going off how good they were when we played them, I think Northampton could steal it. It's only a matter of between that top from 3rd to 6th, there's only 5 points in it, which is obviously we're only in start of March, so there's still a lot of probably wiggle room for that. Mansfield, who I'm quite surprised have dropped out. I thought they were quite good. When we played them twice, and I think we've conceded 8 goals against them. So
Two games in hand, though, still.
That's why then, yeah. And I think they'll probably make the most of those games in hand. And if they win both of them, they're up in 5th. If my maths is correct. And yeah, up in 5th. And so I think they can be up there for shouts, definitely for the higher end of the playoffs, if not that 3rd spot. But I think Northampton, with the pain of last year missing out on a goal, and then going out first round of the playoffs, they're not ones to mess with at this point, this stage of the season, because they know what it means to lose it literally at the last second. So yeah, I'd say probably Leyton Orient, Stevenage, and then I'd Northampton, and I'm going to put Mansfield in there as well, even though they're 8th. I think they're a good side. And
you think they'll go via the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they're playoffs, or they could sneak into that 3rd spot if they get a little bit of, not luck necessarily, but I think in football you need those moments where the blade of grass knocks the ball your direction and it ends up in the bottom corner. So yeah, probably my shout. Same
question to you then, Patsy.
As long as it's not Salford, I don't mind, because otherwise they'll be on TV every week. I'm telling the truth. I tell you what, there's every team up the top there has had their pluses. I mean, Stevenage threw us around the room like a rag doll when we played them at their place. We did have 2 new centre backs, and one of them, was just getting in the team. So you could throw it around how that happened, but in 2018-19, we played Salford and lost 3-0, and then we know that ended up in the National League. So I think it is from Corinne. I think it's Carlisle, Southampton and Stevenage. But they've all got to play each other, if I'm correct, and we've got to play Carlisle as well in 3 games' time. So it's going to be tough for any team. I said on the podcast last week that if Carlisle win the league, they would have won probably 25 to 30 points out of their last 36, 39. So, to do that, you have to go on a bit of a run. Stevenage won the last 2, which is good for them. But exactly, going back to what Mick says, anything can happen. These games, we've got to play Gillingham on Tuesday night, which is never an easy place to go generally. We've got to play Mansfield on Tuesday night, which is great because I can go up to Nottingham and watch that one and, go to the beer keller and have a good beer. But Bradford, not many people are talking about Bradford, and I know they're inconsistent, but if they win the games against teams in the top 7 or 8, then Bradford could start sneaking in there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Orient, hopefully, I'm very confident. I'm not going to be little Leyton Orient and say we're not going up. I think it would be very hard pressed for us not to go up. But as long as anyone apart from Salford are in the top 3, I'm happy.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Relegation then, Tom. I think the gents seem to say that it'll be Hartlepool and Rochdale going down with Crawley staying up. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think those 2 games in hand just play nicely into Crawley's. Not nicely into Crawley's hand for their survival hopes. As much as I, in all honesty, like to see them go down, I think they will just nick it and stay in. Matt, Gillingham are cruising now. So while they did look like very, very troubling times, you guys have really turned it around. And I think I've tweeted about it or definitely said it on the show that these new owners have come in and really, really turned the club around. And it's actually quite nice to see because you never want to see a club with poor ownership and kind of fans not enjoying that aspect. And you can tell Priestfield had a sort of a glow to it when we came, and the fans looked like they wanted to be there. And in previous years, it's not had the greatest of. I don't think attendances is the right word, but when you can feel something about a ground, and there seemed to be real optimism when we came, and it was really nice to see.
Yeah, we've said it for ages that the match day experience just wasn't there. It was no one wanted to be there before the game, no one wanted to be there after the game, and we certainly didn't want to be there during the game.
During the game.
Definitely didn't want to be there during the game. But you know what I mean? Normally, if the football's crap, at least you can have a good social experience. So you get there early, you have a beer, you go in the factory afterwards and have a drink. But there was none of that. And little changes a bit. I tweeted a video Saturday. They've put like big massive vinyls of legends up in the back of the Rainham now. They've got big screens up. So if the factory, the bar's full up, people can come out into that area and have a beer and watch the 12:30 kickoff and the 5:30 kickoff and have a burger or a bacon roll. And it was mental. And it was so good to see. After the video went, I didn't turn up till 2 and I was driving, so I didn't have a drink and I didn't have anything to eat, unfortunately. And I don't like Liverpool, so I didn't watch the Premier League game either. But no, I tweeted a video. I don't know if anyone saw it. I think it went mad. It's had about 30,000 views, but it's just a completely different place to be around. And people like Tom has noticed, and I think others have as well. And Parksy might notice it when he comes down in a couple of weeks, that it's a completely different football club. And I'm going to say it live on this show now, we'll be absolutely fine. There's no danger of Gillingham getting relegated, and I can't wait for next season.
Your January recruitments were just remarkable as well. Sorry, not to just make it into Gillingham Love Fest, but your January
do it.
The January recruitment.
No, do you know what?
Matt,
I was just going to say, I've got a funny feeling you'll end up winning the league next year or being in the top 3.
I keep trying to see if they don't put anything up, do they, until this season's done? But I really fancy us next season. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself.
Depends how good Wrexham are next year, but I think you'll be up there.
Well, he was asked, our owner was asked at the recent Q&A and said, in terms of budgets, you're going to be right up there next season. He said, well, as long as my American friend Ryan Reynolds doesn't ruin it, we'll be all right.
Yeah.
We'll have to see about that. I mean, Parksy, where do you see Gillingham? Do you think Gillingham have the potential to put a real challenge together? Because let's not forget, Orient were in a not dissimilar position midway through last season, and okay, it was a change of manager that sort of prompted the turnaround, but maybe not quite the same situation. But it's interesting, isn't it? Do you think that do you think Gillingham could put a challenge together next season?
I think when we spoke, and Matt was on with you as well and myself, I said that there was a lot of comparisons we made between what happened with the Orient last year and Gillingham. All right, it's not a manager that's changed this year, but it's an owner. But it was around about the same time. Obviously, Richie came in around late February, early March. But yeah, Gillingham are a big club for League Two. They are, been up to the Championship. It's a club that's obviously got a good fan base. And I said on that debate then that I felt like Gillingham would be no worse than top 7. I can see a lot of comparisons with the Orient in that their recruitment was excellent in January, as essentially the Orients were proven last year as well, even though a lot of fans fell out with a lot of them. I think Gillingham will be fine. I think to say that, though, I mean, how many games since January? Well, whenever we had that chat, how many points have Gillingham taken up? Who knows what could happen with the bottom of the table with some of them teams. Hartlepool are being stubborn, aren't they, with a few of them games? And you don't know. This is the thing. Orient can lose 5 games in the first. You never know. And that's probably the beauty of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, gents, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you on the League Two podcast tonight. Thanks as always to our usual guests, Matt Farley from the Stevenage Football Club podcast. Go check it out. And also Matt Boosey from Gills In The Blood TV. Get yourself subscribed to those two. Also get yourself subscribed to the Lowdown podcast, Leyton Orient, for that Patsy does some great work with that. And also go follow the 9 Years podcast, which Tom Large is involved with. Thanks to you for watching at home as well. Thanks to all my guests. This has been EFL Debate, the League Two podcast, and we'll see you again next time.